Hello and welcome to Biology Explained. Today we're going to be looking at sex-linked characteristics as part of my A-level revision series. So we've looked at monohybrid crosses, dihybrid crosses, and how individual genes can be passed down and kind of the combinations of possible alleles that can occur in offspring and how that can affect the outcome depending on whether or not they're dominant or recessive, etc. And we also looked at how multiple genes kind of interact and the possible offspring that can be created from that. But that's if these genes are on other types of chromosomes that aren't an X or Y chromosome. So today we're going to be looking at how some characteristics are sex-linked depending on if you're a male or female and you contain those specific chromosomes, which I'll talk about in a second. So the genetic information for gender is carried on two sex chromosomes. In mammals, females have two X chromosomes, so XX, and for males, they only have one X chromosome, and they also have a Y chromosome. Now, we'd say a characteristic is sex-linked when the allele that codes for it is located on a sex chromosome instead of on one of the other chromosomes in the genome. Now, the Y chromosome is smaller than the X chromosome and carries fewer genes. So most genes on the sex chromosome are only carried on the X chromosome, and these are called X-linked genes. Males only have one X chromosome, and they often only have one allele for a sex-linked gene. So because they may only have one copy, they express that characteristic of this allele even if it's recessive. This makes the males more likely than females to show recessive phenotypes for genes that are sex-linked. So that's interesting to know. So if it's a gene that's on the X chromosome only, as males only have one X chromosome, therefore if they have the recessive gene on their X chromosome, they will express it because they don't have another X chromosome which could have the dominant gene. Therefore, they express their one recessive allele, which we'll look at in a question in a little bit. Now, genetic disorders caused by faulty alleles on sex chromosomes include colour blindness and haemophilia. The faulty alleles for both of these disorders are carried on the X chromosome, so they're called X-linked disorders. So we're going to look at an example, which is colour blindness. This is a sex-linked disorder caused by a faulty allele carried on the X chromosome. As it's sex-linked, both the chromosome and the allele are represented in the genetic diagram. E.g., we have an XN chromosome where X represents it's on the X chromosome and the N represents the faulty allele for colour vision. So big N is dominant, little n is recessive, like we would do normally. It's drawn similar to when we have a kind of a codominant allele where we do a big basic letter with the little letter above it in superscript telling you whether or not it's dominant or recessive. The Y chromosome, meanwhile, doesn't have an allele for colour vision, so it's just represented by Y, meaning it's essentially out of the picture. It doesn't affect the phenotype or genotype here at all, so it's basically just a empty placeholder. Females, therefore, would need two copies of the recessive allele to be colourblind because they have two X chromosomes, while males only need one copy because they only have one X chromosome. This means colour blindness is much rarer in women than men, because men, again, only need one X chromosome to have the recessive gene, while females would need two of their X chromosomes to have the recessive gene. So in the example I've just drawn here, there's a 3-to-1 ratio of an offspring without colour blindness to offspring with colour blindness. But when a female carrier and a male without colour blindness have children, only their male offspring are at risk of being colourblind. So you can say that that's a predicted 2-to-1 ratio of female offspring without colour blindness to male offspring without colour blindness to male offspring with colour blindness. And so that's a classic way of being able to show whether or not something is sex-linked. If it's predominantly showing up in only males, that's an indication that it's sex-linked because the males only need one of these X chromosomes to show, if it's recessive that is, which most sex-linked disorders are, to show that they have it. Therefore, it's more likely to be in males, which is a big indicator for a sex-linked disease. Once you got your head worked around that, it's a fairly easy kind of thing to work out for sex-linked. You just got to remember the Y doesn't do anything, so essentially males only have one allele, while females have two possible alleles. And once you remember that, you can work through it and come up with any conclusions. Although, if you've got any questions, feel free to comment them. Next, we're going to look at a question. A single gene controls the presence of hair on the skin of cattle. The gene is carried on the X chromosome. Its dominant allele causes hair to be present on the skin, and its recessive allele causes hairlessness. The diagram shows the pattern of inheritance of these alleles in a group of cattle, and we can see we have the male mating with a female, both of which have hair, and then we can see that they have 3 offspring, 2 of which don't have hair and 1 of which doesn't have hair, and the one that doesn't have hair is a male. Then we can see one of the hairy females mates with a hairy male, but then both their children are hairless males. And so that's what I've just talked about previously. We can work our way through this. So as one of the offspring of the grandparents, of the first of the parents, grandparents, as one of their offspring is hairless, that implies one of the parents must be a carrier on the X chromosome for the hairlessness gene. But as the father still has hair, still has hair, therefore, because he only has one X chromosome, he doesn't carry the recessive hairlessness gene. Therefore, the mother, as she has hair, therefore she must be heterozygous and have one X gene for hair and one X gene with the recessive for not hair. And then when they have children, the possible combinations would then be 2 to 1 to 1, as I was just talking about a minute ago, where all the female offspring will be heterozygous, and then you either have the male offspring, a 25% chance of them inheriting the X chromosome recessively, or a 25% chance of them inheriting the X chromosome dominantly. Therefore, there's a 25% chance they will have the recessive gene and be hairless. That's why we've got one male with hair and one male without hair. One has the recessive gene, one has the dominant gene. Meanwhile, the daughter has both, so she's heterozygous. Therefore, she still has hair because it's recessive, the hairlessness gene. So then we have to look at what happens next for the next offspring. And we know already, as we've worked through it, that this female that's mating with this male, number 5 mating with number 6, number 5 is heterozygous because we've worked through the previous bit. So therefore, she mates with a male who has hair, and that means he has to be dominant for the X gene because otherwise he would have this recessive hairlessness gene. So therefore he's X to the H. And so therefore, when they mate, we can work out doing a Punnett square, ideally, what their offspring would be. And then we know because both the children are male, they're only going to inherit one X chromosome. And as they're male, they have to inherit a Y chromosome from somewhere, so they inherit that from the father, meaning they can't get an X chromosome from their father. So that's important to remember. Therefore, they're going to inherit one of the two X chromosomes from the mother. So there's a 50% chance they inherit the dominant X chromosome, 50% chance they inherit the recessive chromosome. And as we see here, both of these children are hairless males, meaning they're both inherited the recessive X chromosome. Therefore, when we do the question, part 1, the hairlessness is caused by the recessive allele. How do we prove that? Well, we can see that animals 2 and 5 have hair, but their offspring do not. So therefore, 2 and 5 must be heterozygous or carriers, showing that it is a recessive allele. And then for part 2, hairlessness is caused by a gene on the X chromosome. We can see that hairless males have fathers with hair. And you can see this by, if you look at both fathers with hair, 1 and 6, they both only pass on their Y chromosome. And if this was only linked to the Y gene, therefore all their male children would also have hair, but they don't, implying it's an X-linked gene. Hope that's clear. Please like and subscribe to stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.